Okay, let's begin with the word of prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we are so very thankful for our time to study together, and we ask for your Spirit's presence as we complete the morning studies for this week. We ask, Lord, that we can bring together the thoughts and the ideas as we study the prophecy of Revelation 9, especially the second woe. We're thankful, Lord, for the way that you work in our lives, the blessings that we receive, and the light that you have shone upon our path. Help us to understand it correctly. We pray for those searching for truth. We ask, Lord, that you can lead and guide them. Give us meekness and lowliness of mind and character, and help us to reflect Christ's character to all that we come in contact with. Be with us now in this study, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Good morning, everyone. So we're going to look at the second woe, the 391 years and 15 days. And there are some loose ends that we're going to come back to probably when we go through later studies on this, maybe next week or the week after. And some of those things have to do with the things that we've already discussed that we haven't completed, such as restraining and loosening. Those are things, there's lots of points we've touched on, but we haven't come to really solid explanations of them. Now, I'm going to go to the whiteboard, I guess. I could use my PowerPoints, but this might work better. I might come back to the PowerPoint after that. Okay. So, when it comes to the 391 years and 15 days of Josiah Litch's prophecy, there's a lot of history connected to it that Litch doesn't really touch on. And we're going to come back to some of it, particularly when we deal with the fall of Turkey. So one of the things that we see with Litch, here, this needs to be moved up a bit. See if that works better. Hopefully that's good. Is that he dealt with Daniel 11, verse 40 to 45, as a fulfillment addressing Turkey and Egypt. And we know that interpretation didn't really follow Miller's rules and didn't pan out the way that they thought it should. And so when we look at August 11th, 1840, the way that Litch was looking at it had to do with what they were understanding about Turkey. Now, he believed that Turkey was going to fall. And we're going to address that point of how this history fits together. Now, the first thing, of course, we have this date, July 27th, 1299. July 27th, 1299. So I'm going to put the Julian dates up at the top. Is August 3rd, 1299. And this is also the 26th day of the fourth month on the biblical calendar. And then we have 150 years. Now, if we're going to look at the Julian date, July 18th, 1449, that's going to be July 27th, Gregorian. And I don't know, I needed to put 1299 there. Let's put this here. And this is also the 26th day of the fourth month. Now we know that Josiah Litch never made this distinction. That is, he's not thinking about the biblical calendar. Actually, in 1838, he has no idea about it when he first makes this interpretation of this prophecy in this way, starting at July 27th, 1299, as the start of this period. Now, we know that it's going to end here, July 27th. Whoops, I should do it this way because I want the Gregorian dates on the bottom. So it's going to end on July 27th. This is going to be 1840. Now, this is going to be August 8th on the Julian calendar. And does that make sense to people? I know it can be confusing. But that is, the Julian calendar is behind the Gregorian calendar, as you can see. Here, they're 7 days behind. Here, they're going to be 9 days behind. And here, they're going to be 12 days behind. Does that make sense? Now, some people may not understand, who watch this video, understand that why it's behind is because the Julian calendar is going to add leap years. They're going to add an extra day every 4 years. And in doing so, the calendar gets behind the solar year. Okay. So, well, I'm doing this backwards though. So this is the Julian date, right? So that's August 8th. I'm used to putting actually the Gregorian dates on top. So this is the 26th day of the fourth month. So this is a pretty simple idea, is that if we take the 26th day of the fourth month, we start with July 27th Julian, and we end with July 27th Gregorian. Now, that's what Uriah Smith did, but he never recognized the biblical dates. So the criticism that people have is that if he had used the Julian calendar, he would have had to start on July 27th Julian in order to count the 15 days. Right? So we're going to have over here August 11th. Right? Because that's going to be the 15 days. And so if he would counted from August 8th, 15 days, what date would he have come to?
'23rd.
Yeah, so August 23rd, right? Now, so that means if he had taken into account the Julian calendar, he would have had to put that as August 23rd. That is, if he had started on July 27th. So if he had started on July 27th, Julian, what date would he have had to follow? So I'm going to put here, so I'm just going to put here July 27th, Julian in 1840. What date would this have been?
'15th.
Yeah, so this would have been July 15th. And so he should have counted then from July 15th, 15 days, if he had used the Julian calendar. because this is a Julian date and this is a Julian date. So that's what some people say that he should have done. He should have just used the same Julian date. But he has other options because the Julian calendar is drifting. There's no reason why he should use the Julian date, July 27th. He chose to use this date. But what's the Gregorian date in 1299? August 3rd, right? So shouldn't he have started from August 3rd, Gregorian, and then counted 15 days? Because if you're going to use the same Gregorian date, he could have done that. So I know I'm confusing everyone, but you can see the problem. Now, of course, he could have started here, but then, then he would have to say, well, it would be August 3rd Gregorian in 1449, and then August 3rd Gregorian in 1840. Or he could have consistently used July 27th, but Julian, or he could have done what he did, just ignore whether it's Julian and Gregorian and just use the date July 27th. Now, is there validity in just using the date July 27th and ignoring the change in calendars? Was that really a valid way of counting this period of time? Did he make a mistake in doing that? Would that have been wrong to use a Julian date and count 391 years and end on a Julian date and then count 15 days?
Yeah, that would have been wrong.
Okay. Why would it have been wrong?
Because there would have been some difference between the two calendars and he wasn't accounting for that difference.
Okay. So, but he could have just been using July 27th as a symbol and said, the calendar doesn't matter. And that's kind of what he did. So we can say it's wrong in a certain sense, but we know we have different types of calendars we can use. Now, the Julian and the Gregorian are not the same calendar. They have a difference. And he chose not to acknowledge that difference, even though he knew of it, because he would have had a grandfather, for instance, who had 2 birthdays, because in 1752, the United States adopted the Gregorian calendar. And that's, it's roughly 60 years before Josiah Litch was born. And so he would have known people who had been born prior to this, or he would have known about people, and he would have definitely known some of the American presidents, early American presidents had 2 birthdays. That is, they could mark their birthday as either a Julian date or a Gregorian date. So people would have been familiar with this idea that the calendar had changed, but he's not going to take it into account. And so we can say that he was wrong on the one level, that he should have, but he didn't in God's providence, because he had lots of different options. He could have taken August 3rd Gregorian and just consistently used that and counted the 15 days. So that would have ended up 7 days difference than his final date. He could have converted the date, the Julian date, but you can see, because the Julian date changes, if he had gone to the Julian date, he would have ended up 12 days different, not 7 days different. And if he had used the date here, if he had used July 18th, okay, how would he have done that? So he would have done it differently. So it would have been July 27th. I'm getting confused myself, because this is the Gregorian date. So he had used the Julian date. And if he'd used July 27th Julian here, it would have ended up being August August 5th, right? So he could have used August 5th. So there's lots of different ways that he could have done it. And I think that would have been part of the problem. Part of the problem would be deciding, well, what date am I going to use? Am I going to use the Julian and keep the Julian all the way through this prophecy? Or am I going to, change between the Julian and Gregorian somewhere? Where do I do that change? So I think there's like 6 different options that he could have had based on how he interpreted the change in calendars. So that became a problem. Now, if we use the biblical date, of course, we're going to find that July 27th, Julian, or July 27th, Gregorian, is going to line up with the 26th day of the 4th month. Now, when we look at the prophecy, it goes an hour, a day, a month, and a year. How did Josiah Litch count this? Did he put the hour, the 15 minutes, at the beginning of the prophecy?
I don't believe he did.
Yeah, he didn't. He didn't count 15 days from July 27th, and then count a year, and then count 30 years, and then count 360 years. Because he went to July 27th, Gregorian here, and then he counted 15 days to August 11th, correct? So he did this
Yes.
in a reverse order. And you can see it often in the calculations. They're going to say a year is 360 days, so that's 360 years. A month is going to be 30. A day is going to be 1. And then an hour is going to be 1/24th, right? That's how they do the calculation. And that's how we do the calculation too. So why did he do it this way?
Might have just been easier.
Okay, and it's easier for what reason? Because if you want to get this 1/24th of an hour, which equals 15 days, I guess I should put, it's kind of necessary to first deal with this principle of a day for a year, right?
Yeah, I think the year, month, and day certainly a bit easier to work out.
Yeah, it's easier to work out, and it's easier to explain to people. If you started with the 15 days, you haven't dealt with this principle. So just from teaching it and illustrating it to people, it's easier this way. But that means if I was going to lay this on a line, I would put 360 years, and this would bring me to 1809. And then I would have to put 30, and that'd bring me to 1839. And then I'd have 1 year, right?
Okay, but let me ask the question in this way. Was he doing this calculation chiastically?
Well, he was, but not intentionally,
Okay,
right? So because the structure shows up chiastically, and we will see this. But for whatever reason, my reason is that this was just an easier way of illustrating it. And especially when you're going to have the 15 days, because when he first presented this in 1838, he just said sometime in the month of August. So and you'd think, well, why didn't he just actually do the calculation then? And I think part of it is he was uncertain how to do it. That is, I think he recognized that he was starting with a Julian date and he was looking at a Gregorian date. I think he knew that. And so he didn't maybe know how to address that at the beginning. And maybe, I'm guessing, but maybe as he started to look at it, it became a bit of a problem. He had no way to definitively say, I need to start on such and such a date. Since this is a Julian date that he's working with, then that's what he needs to do, is just accept it that he's going to use a Gregorian date. He's not going to try to figure that out. Now, some people have said to me, if he had started here on July 27th, Julian, and he had counted the 15 days here, so this is where he'd have to put the 15 days. And remember, they include this whole thing together as 541 years in 15 days. But if he had counted the 15 days here, people have tried to tell me, well, then it wouldn't matter of moving from Julian to Gregorian, which of course, it wouldn't make any difference which way you count it as far as which day you end up with. I mean, it's true, you wouldn't, if you counted the 15 days here, you would be dealing with a Julian date of July 27th. And you would have to do then the conversion from Julian to Gregorian from here. But it wouldn't make any difference if you're going to convert, in the sense that at some point, you're not going to come to July 27th Julian, right? Or you're not going to come to August 11th Gregorian. You'd have to convert it from Julian to Gregorian. So switching it around doesn't change the calculation. But an interesting occurrence happens when we count it this way. That is, we end up with July 27th. In these 2 years being July 15th. Right, so we see, the Julian dates are, depends whether you call it ahead or behind, but basically they've added too much there. And so when we get here, these are the Gregorian dates. I'm thinking, am I doing that? No, I'm doing this wrong. I knew I was doing it wrong. This is wrong. What am I doing wrong? Here's what I'm doing wrong. Yeah, I did this backwards. Nobody corrected me. This should be July 15th. Is that correct? Yes, those are Julian dates. We got them backwards. And this is August 8th. There we go. I knew something was wrong. Is that correct, Stephen, now? So the Julian dates are behind, right? Because they added an extra day. People understand what's happening? Does that make more sense than what I had drawn before?
So the 1809, that's the 26th day of the 4th month in the Julian calendar. It's July 27 then.
July 27th on the Julian calendar. Not on the Gregorian. Okay. Yeah, so I confused myself by putting the Gregorian on the bottom and the Julian on the top, and normally I do it the other way around, but maybe it was good I did it this way just to exercise my mind a little bit.
To me, there's something about July 15 in them dates.
Right, yes.
And
So
then
you'll see
1809
July 27th Gregorian is July 15th Julian. Yes, but these are just the 26 days of the fourth months, right? So I'm lining up first the 26th day of the fourth month. Now we have events that are going to occur that are going to lead to this date. So remember, this is the Gregorian dates down here. These are the dates on our calendar. And August 11th, 1840 is going to be 15 days from July 27th. So that's the way that Josiah Litch counted it. Now, there are events that lead to this. Now, this event here is what I'd call the ultimatum. The ultimatum that was given to the Pasha of Egypt, Muhammad Ali, right? That put the Ottoman Empire under the protection of the four Christian nations, Russia, Prussia, England, and Germany, right? Can anybody hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, so for some reason I got cut off for a second. So where did I get cut off?
You were giving your ultimatum.
Okay, so the ultimatum. So we got Russia, Prussia, England, and Germany. And this is an ultimatum that is delivered to Muhammad Ali, the Pasha of Egypt. Okay, right? That makes sense to people? And that's going to be delivered on August 11th, 1840. So that's that date. This is where we lead to. Now that date is August 23rd, Julian, but we're not concerned about that date. Now there are some events that are going to occur on our calendar in 1809 and 1839 and 1840. And these dates or these events are going to occur on July 27th. So this is going to be 12 days earlier that lead to this event. And they're just the events in history that we understand. So on 12 days before, on July 27th in 1809, what occurs? Anybody know?
I'm not able to call up something quick, so.
Okay, so this is the Treaty of Dardanelles. Something like that, it's spelled. So this is a treaty, I believe it's Russia, Germany, France, and England, but I could be wrong. It could have been Prussia instead of Russia. But this is a treaty dealing with the issues of the day. That is, this is signed on July 27th, this Treaty of Dardanelles, and it has to do with the issue that's happening with Turkey and Egypt. So there's a war going on. And here, I guess I should read it so that people get what it's about. So And just hang on, I'm gonna have to share my screen here. Okay, so here it is. Okay, so this is encyclopedia.com. Dardanelles, the Treaty of 1809. Officially known as the Treaty of Peace, Commerce, and Secret Alliance, Great Britain and the Ottoman Empire on the 5th of January, 1809, with ratifications exchanged in Istanbul on the 27th of July, 1809. So this is ratified or signed on July 27th, 1809. So it's going to talk about what this is happening. This is the Treaty of Dardanelles grew out of an international rivalry surrounding the Napoleonic Wars. So this has to do with what's happening with Napoleon. Remember, Napoleon has gone into Egypt. There's a battle that goes on with Syria. There's all these different things that occur. And those were understood to be in connection with Daniel 11, verse 40 to 45 by Josiah Litch. So after Russia joined the Third Coalition against Napoleon, France endeavored to involve the Ottoman Empire in a war with Russia as a distraction. This war began in 1806 and lasted until 1812. Now allied with Russia, Britain sent a naval expedition against Istanbul in 1807. Although Britain was able to force its way through the Dardanelles, the Ottomans pushed them back with a loss of 2 ships. Britain also occupied Alexandria, but was forced to withdraw. Except for Britain, France was able to defeat the Third Coalition powers. And in 1807, Russia once more allied with France. So in this treaty here, this is Sir Robert Adair led the British negotiations with the Sublime Porte that led to the 1809 treaty. The treaty contained 11 articles which were appended, 4 separate and secret articles, and 1 additional and secret article. The basic articles addressed the recent war between the 2 powers. They provided for an end of hostilities between Great Britain and the Ottomans, with the exchange of prisoners, restoration of any Ottoman fortress in Britain's possession, mutual restoration of the property of British and Ottoman citizens seized by either side during the war. Okay, so this is a continuation of the 1675 Treaty of Capitulations, right? But this becomes a pretty important part of this whole series of events. So we have this Treaty of Dardanelles. Okay, so yeah, and it's between Great Britain and Ottoman Empire, this one. Okay, now this is July 27th. But the date, the 26th day of the 4th month, is August 8th. So August 8th is July 27th, Julian.
I think that's wrong.
What's that? You think I did it backwards?
I think it's the 27th of July, Gregorian, in 1809. So
No.
it's actually, is it not the 15th of July, Julian?
Yes. So the 15th of July, Julian, that's what I'm going to put up here. July 15th, Julian, so this is going to be a Julian date, is July 27th, Gregorian. Right?
Yes.
Okay. So the event occurs on July 15th on the Julian calendar, but it's July 27th on the Gregorian. But the 26th day of the 4th month does not fall on July 27th Gregorian. the 26th day of the fourth month falls on July 27th, Julian. So the event precedes the biblical date by 12 days. The event occurs on the July 27th symbol, 12 days before the 26th day of the fourth month symbol. Hopefully people can understand what I'm doing here, because I'm marking the 26th day of the fourth month is either a Gregorian date, such as here and here, or a Julian date, such as in these three places. So that's the first thing, is we can see the 26th day of the fourth month lines up in those years, but the event that's going to be fulfilled in this year occurs 12 days before the biblical date. But it occurs on the Gregorian date of July 27th. Does that make sense? Have I lost you guys?
Yeah, just the calendar converter gives it as the 27th day of the fourth month. That's the August 9 gives.
Okay, so you're in 1809. Okay, yes, okay. So you're using the calendar converter there. You can't do that for this date. Okay, so don't worry about the calendar converter. It's wrong. Okay. We're going to deal with that point later. I'll show people what's happening.
I know.
Okay, but we can agree that July 27th on the Gregorian calendar is July 15th on the Julian. In the 1840s or 1800s, correct? Stephen, you agree with that?
Yeah, July 27th, Julian is the 8th of August, yes.
Right, okay. Yeah, now we're going to deal with this because it's going to say it's the 27th day of the fourth month on the calendar converter. Right? On the biblical date.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll deal with that later. Okay, but what we can say is that, and there's a reason why I'm putting the 26th day of the fourth month as August 8th, which is July 27th, Julian. Now, the main point here is that the event that fulfills the prophecy occurs 12 days before the biblical date. And the same thing's going to happen here in 1839. So 30 years later, on July 27th, Gregorian, we're going to have another event. It's called the collective note. Okay. Now, July 27th, Gregorian is going to be, again, July 15th, Julian. Okay. So, but the biblical date, and if you look at 1839, the 26th day of the fourth month is going to be August 8th, Gregorian, and July 27th, Julian. Okay. Somebody's mic's on. I'm not sure. It's probably Stevens or someone's. I can hear a lot of noise. And we're going to look at the calendar converter right away, and we're going to address these things so that maybe that will help a little bit. Now, this collective note, this is the one that is, there's 4 signees to this of Europe. And it's very similar to what's going to be signed in the Treaty of London. Now, the Treaty of London is going to be on July 15th. So this is the Treaty of London. And the Treaty of London is the paper that's going to be handed as the ultimatum. So from the time that this is signed, there's going to be 27 days until it's delivered into the hand of the Pasha of Egypt, Muhammad Ali. Okay. So let's take a look at this in a bit more detail. Now, I know some people have heard of these things, but it's a little bit confusing to people. So we're going to just take a bit of time to look at this information. So we're going to go back, we're going to go to 1299 first. And we're going to go to July 27th on the Julian calendar. So hopefully people can see this quite well. I don't know how to get it better than that. So what we have here is we have 1299, July 27th, and we can see that that's August 3rd on the Gregorian calendar, and it's the 26th day of the 4th month on the biblical calendar. And then we're going to go to 1449. But when I go to 1449, if I go to July 27th on the Julian, it's going to end up being August 5th. It's going to be the 6th day of the 5th month. But if I use the biblical date and I go back to the 26th day of the 4th month on the biblical calendar, you'll see it's July 27th on the Gregorian and July 18th on the Julian. So you can see that there's 9 days difference here between these two calendars, where there was 7 days difference in 1299. So the Julian calendar is behind 2 more days than the Gregorian. Now, if we just go to 1850, or 1840, pardon me, and we look at July 27th, we'll see it's still the 26th day of the 4th month, but the date is moved to July 15th Julian. Now, if I go to 1839, and I want to have the 26th day of the 4th month on the biblical calendar, you'll see it's August 8th on the Gregorian and July 27th on the Julian. So the 26th day of the 4th month is either going to be a Julian or Gregorian date. Now, Stephen pointed out that if I go to 1809 and I go to July 27th, it's actually Tammuz 25. So it's the 25th day of the 4th month. So what people say is if I go to the 26th day of the 4th month, I actually don't line up with July 28th. So some people argue, well, it doesn't work in 1809, and either just don't count it, ignore it. But we have something that's quite interesting. How did the Millerites calculate the biblical calendar in the 1840s? When later on, when, for 1843, I guess, 1844, how did they calculate it? How did they determine October 22nd, 1844, for instance?
They have some mathematicians calculations.
Okay, which is actually the Farmer's Almanac. That's what they're using. And the Farmer's Almanac that they're using comes from Boston. Why are they using Boston? They're not using Jerusalem. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to be looking at the moon, but they're not going to be using Jerusalem. They're going to be using Boston. So let's go back to 1844. And we're going to go into the spring of 1844. Maybe what I'll first do is look at the 21st. So anyway, here we have March 1844. I know it's hard to see. I can't really get it any bigger because if I do this, it actually makes it smaller because it makes the print bigger. And if I do this, I guess I can get the calendar a little bigger that way. The moon's a little bigger, but it makes these numbers all smaller all around here. So I don't know which I should do, but I mean, maybe I guess I could do this. You know, we can have this stuff bigger. I guess we don't need the calendar. Oh, the letters still stay big. It's just the moon that gets small. Okay, so maybe this is the best way to do it. So here we have 1844. Now, we're going to have the spring equinox, and that's going to occur in Jerusalem. I'm in Jerusalem right now at 12:15 in the afternoon, what we call local time. That is based upon the local azimuth. It's not based upon standard time. It's just what we call local time. And so 2:15 in the afternoon is what we call the spring equinox. And then you're going to have here you have on the 19th, you're going to have the new moon. That's the astronomical new moon, not the one that you would see. And that's going to be at 2:38 in the morning. And what we end up doing here, because of where you determine the spring equinox and where you see the first visible crescent, you would actually have the first day of the first month as being March 21st. You're going to see the visible crescent. The crescent's going to be visible this evening. And we can tell that if we go to this website here, and I go to 1844, and I go to the first month, and you're going to see in Jerusalem, we can see on the 20th of March, the first visible crescent. It's actually quite high in the place where you can see it. And so the first day of the first month, according to the rabbinic calendar, is going to be March 21st, and to the Karaite calendar. So hopefully people aren't getting bored with this. Okay, is everybody seeing this well? Anybody have any questions about what I'm doing here? Now, if I go to Boston, Massachusetts, you're just going to see that these times are going to be shifted over. Spring equinox is going to be later. It's about 4.5 hours later. You're still going to see, you're actually going to see you're going to see the new moon on the evening of the 20th. So the 21st would be the first day of the month. But now when I go to this month here, when am I going to see the new moon from Boston? Am I going to see it on the evening of the 19th, making the 20th day the first day of the first month? Or am I going to see it on the evening of the 18th, making the 19th day the first day of the first month? And it was determined by the Millerites that the new moon would be seen in Boston on the evening of the 18th. So this is in April. Now, if I go to Jerusalem, that would not be the case. In Jerusalem, in 1844, if they had used Jerusalem to determine the first day of the first month, what day would have been the first day of the first month?
Would it have been the 20th?
It would have been the 20th, right? So I'm going to go here on this, because this is like a rabbinic calendar site or a Karaite calendar site. You're going to see here. Now, when I say that, it is so close here. So this program gives the moon right on the line from where it can possibly be seen. Now, so it is possible, if they use Jerusalem, that April 19th could have been the first day of the first month. But I don't actually think it was in 1844. It wasn't the first day of the second month, partly because they have 30 days to the month. So it would have actually been April 20th would have been the first day of the second month if you were using a Karaite calendar. But it's almost possibly not visible. But in Boston, it would have been up here. So it would have been up a bit higher, and it would have definitely been able to be seen on April 19th. So other calendar things, this is one program. Other ones show that it wouldn't be, that the 20th would be the first, because this is the 18th, this is the evening. Possibly it could have been seen, but most likely it would have been seen the next evening. It's very unlikely that it would be seen when it's right on the line like that, but it could have been. It's possible. Just depends on the atmospheric conditions. If they're perfect, it would have been able to be seen. If it was a little bit too much humidity, dust in the air, they probably wouldn't have been able to see it. So possibly it could have been April 20th. You'd have to actually go and observe it. You'd have to go back in time and go and observe it. Now, the interesting point then comes to 1809. So if I go back to 1809, whoops, that backwards. And I'm going to go to the beginning of the year in 1809. You're going to see that March, it's going to be too early. So the year is going to start later. And the date that we have here, this is the 14th. So remember, this is a Gregorian calendar. We're going to have to convert it into Julian, because I said in 1809, you're going to have the first day of the first month on the 4th day of April in order to have the 27th day of July on the 26th day of the fourth month. So it's a little bit confusing because now we're working with a Gregorian calendar. It doesn't give us a Julian calendar. So we just have to take 12 days off of it. Now this is in Jerusalem. And so I'll go back to this one. We're going to go to 1809. And if I go to 1809 and I want to look at when the new moon is going to be sighted, in Jerusalem, it's going to be sighted on the evening of the 16th. And that would make the 17th day the first day of the first month. So I'm going to go to the calendar converter. I'm going to go to here. I'm going to go to April. And I'm going to go to the 17th. When I do that, which day is the first day of the first month on the Julian calendar?
April 5.
It's going to be April 5. Now, in order for it to be April 4th, to be the first day of the first month, I would have needed to sight the new moon the evening earlier, correct?
Yes.
Right. So if I go here, so I would have to have saw the new moon the evening before. So if I'm in Jerusalem and I look at the evening before, notice that it's slightly below this line. Okay. But if I'm in Boston, which is like, I think it's about 5 or 6 hours difference, 5 hours maybe it is. And I was going to look at the new moon in Boston on April 15th. Would I have seen the first visible crescent? Yeah, so it's 7 hours difference actually. So notice the time. It's going to be 3 o'clock on the evening of the 15th. In Boston, you would actually see the first visible crescent, and it would make the 16th day the first day of the first month. Now, what's the significance of that? So some people would say, well, all you're trying to do is it didn't line up correctly. And so you're going to use the Millerites' way of counting the year or the month in 1809 instead of the correct biblical way. Instead of going from Jerusalem, you're going to go from Boston. Well, why would I be consistent? Now, it doesn't affect the other dates. If I use Boston for the other dates, they're all going to line up the same. But why would I argue that I want to have the 16th day of April being the first day of the first month? That is, I'm going to have 29 days in V8R, and I'm going to have the first be April 4th, Julian. What would be the significance of that? Why would I want to do that? What would that tell me? The fact that I had to do this. Hopefully people understand what I'm talking about. If somebody doesn't, please let me know. Does this tell us something about Millerite history? That I have to use Boston in 1809 to calculate the calendar instead of Jerusalem? Because when is 1809? When would our calculation of the calendar move from Jerusalem to Boston?
In 1798.
In 1798. Why in 1798?
That would be the glorious land.
Because it's the glorious land. The United States is now arisen, two-horned beast, and we're in the time of the United States. And so when I'm going to do a calculation of a calendar, especially in Millerite history, I want to use Boston. Does that make sense? And so it told us something. Now, somebody could just say, again, it didn't work out the way you wanted, so you fudged the numbers so that it lined up with the 26th day of the fourth month. But do we need July 27th to be the 26th day of the fourth month on the biblical calendar in 1809 and 1839 for Josiah Litch's prophecy to be valid?
No.
No, we don't. So it's not like we needed it in order to be valid. But the fact that we could use the biblical calendar and it would line up in this way tells us that the Millerites were correct in how they did things, even though they did it in a way that they didn't fully understand, because we don't know. The Millerites definitely did not know and understand the biblical calendar. They didn't even understand the biblical calendar in 1844 because they were using what they thought was the biblical calendar. Well, they thought it was the Karaite calendar. So they just really didn't have an idea of what they were doing. But in God's providence, they did. Now, an interesting thing, does anybody know when Josiah Litch was born?
Uh, 1804.
1809.
Okay.
And April 4th, 1809. Right? So if you want to have the first day of the first month, if it's April 4th, then you know July 27th will be the 26th day of the fourth month. Now, of course, he was born on a Gregorian calendar. So you can see here, this is the day he was born, the 18th day of Viadar in 1809. This is April 4th. And this date is correct, by the way, in 1809. But if we put it as April 4th, we would see, he would have lined up with the first day of the first month. So, but it's interesting that he is born on the date that is this important date for marking July 27th as being the 27th day or the 26th day of the fourth month. Does that make sense to people? That there's a symbol in Josiah Litch's birthday that relates to calculating July 27th as the 26th day of the fourth month. I think that's quite profound, that his birthday can be used this way. Now, in 1809, so we're going to go to July 27th. So July 27th in 1809, this is the Treaty of Dardanelles, and you can see that it's July 15th. Now, you can see it's the 13th day of Tammuz. Of course, this would have actually been the 14th day of Tammuz, right? So it's behind a bit because this is based on Jerusalem. But if I would go to the 27th of July, it should be the 26th of Tammuz if we use Boston, August 8th. And that's the signing of the Treaty of Dardanelles is actually earlier. It's 12 days earlier, right? So this symbol ends up being on the 26th day of the fourth month. But it's actually the symbol occurs 12 days after the event. We're going to see the same thing in 1839. So in 1839, again, we have the collective note, and we're going to look at that collective note. July 27th is the 26th day of the fourth month. This is the date that lines up with that, but the treaty itself was signed on July 15th Julian, which was July 27th Gregorian. So it was signed 12 days prior to the biblical date of the 26th day of the fourth month. And then we see this again in 1840, but we see it in a different way. So in 1840, we're going to have the Treaty of London, and the Treaty of London is going to be signed on July 15th. July 15th. But the event is going to be on, let's see if I can do this right. The event is the date. Let me see, what am I doing wrong? Oh, I'm in 1849. There's the problem. Did that wrong. There we go. So July 27th, Gregorian is the 26th day of the fourth month. The event is signed on July 15th, 12 days before the biblical date of the 26th day of the fourth month. And then it's going to be delivered 15 days later, right? So on August 11th, which happens to be July 30th, Julian. Now, any questions about that? I know that's rather confusing. Well, I guess what I should do here is go. So I'll show you this here as well. So this is from Wikipedia. This is the Treaty of London, or the Convention of London. It's called in 1840. So sometimes people call it the Treaty of London, but I guess technically it's the Convention of London. So it was a treaty with the title, the Convention of the Pacification of the Levant. Levant is the Palestinian area including Syria, signed on the 15th of July, 1840, between the great powers of United Kingdom, Austria, that's it, Austria, Prussia, and Russia, on one hand, and the Ottoman Empire on the other. The convention lent some support to the Ottoman Empire, which was having difficulty with the Egyptian possessions. Because Muhammad Ali of Egypt did not accept the terms of the convention, the Oriental Crisis of 1840 resulted. So what ends up happening is that this is delivered to Muhammad Ali, the Pasha of Egypt, on August 11th, 1840. This is this Convention of London that's signed on July 15th. Now, he does end up rejecting it, but that doesn't really matter. Once it's delivered to the Pasha of Egypt on August 11th, the Ottoman Empire is officially under the protection of England, Austria, Prussia, and Russia. Does that make sense to people?
It's making a good point.
Okay. And then we have the collective note. And this is July 27th, 1839. So this is a year prior, roughly. I'm just trying to see if I can find this here. I probably should have had this saved or set aside. Yeah. So this one had 5 powers, the collective note. France was included in this one. Anyway, the collective note, and there's lots on it. And that was signed July 27th. So anyway, I'm not going to go into that. So we have these 12 days. What's the significance of this? Taken a lot longer than I wanted to for this, but so what have we discovered in just doing this brief study here? What are we learning? Looking at that mess on the board.
Well, one of the comments you just made about 1839 was that France was involved.
In
Right?
1839, but they weren't in the one in 1840.
I disagree with you.
Oh, I'm wrong?
If you go back to the page that you were just referring to, when
Okay,
you were reading this on the Convention of London,
that's the Convention of London, so that's different.
I understand that.
Okay,
But when you take a look at this, of the signatories to the Convention of London, the first one listed is called the July Monarchy, but the colors are those of France.
oh, okay. So they have here, the Convention of London is France, United Kingdom, Austria, Prussia, Russia, and the Ottoman Empire. That's kind of weird because they don't list that in their explanation here.
I understand that. But France was seen as being one of the key powers, even though in July of 1840, it's not showing as being France, it's saying as the July Monarchy.
Yeah, on that side, but I'm just saying here, they say
Right.
United Kingdom, Austria, Prussia, and Russia. And every other explanation of the ultimatum never includes France or even the July Monarchy.
Understood.
So that's kind of weird. I've never noticed that before, that we have the July Monarchy there, because they always say England, Austria, Prussia, Russia.
I understand that.
And I was saying Germany before, but it's Austria. Okay, so that's kind of weird. So I'm going to have to look into that to see what the July Monarchy of France I mean, maybe because it's not a kingdom, they're not including it. I don't know.
Well,
I'm not
how
I don't even
how
know
can
what
it not,
monarchy is.
how can it not be a kingdom if it's a monarchy?
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Officially the Kingdom of France.
Right.
Starting on the 26th of July, 1830, with the July Revolution of 1830, and ending the 23rd of February, 1848, with the Revolution of 1848. I've never even heard of this. So interesting. So I'm going to have to look into that. That's an interesting point. We do know every time they talk about, here, I'm going to look up the collective note here. See if I have. Because with the collective note, which is 1839, it's a year earlier, they usually talk about 5 powers. So the collective note of 1839. I'm gonna have to. Okay, while I'm looking that up, what are we learning here about this prophecy of Josiah Litch's?
Well, the first point that you've been making that is very direct is that the timing for all of this is related more to the glorious land in the spiritual sense than it is in the literal sense.
Okay. Yeah. Now, because we have lots of different prophecies tied together that are intertwined with each other. So one is we can see that this prophecy of Josiah Litch is tied to the 1260 days ending in 1798 and the rise of the United States in its dating. Right? So that it's not just some separate prophecy in some ways. So that's one thing. What else? So what is this telling us? Okay, so I'm going to go to while we think about that question. This is about the collective note. It says here, a conference of representatives of Great Britain, France, Russia, Prussia, and Austria met at London, and the Sultan, when on the point of yielding, was encouraged by the receipt of a collective note from the ministers of these powers at Constantinople, dated the 27th of July, 1839, to the following effect. So it's not really that important about all the details of it. But it says, it is well known that the policy of France subsequently diverged from that of the other powers, which without her signed the Treaty of London on the 15th of July, 1840, to the following effect. So you can see on this one, it talks about the undersigned have this morning received instructions from their respective governments, in virtue of which they have the honor to inform the Sublime Porte that agreement between the 5 powers is ensured, and to invite the Porte to suspend any final determination without their concurrence. So notice there's 5 powers here, and that they say that France did not sign the Treaty of London on the 15th of July. And here is what it says in that. It says, His Highness the Sultan, having addressed himself to their Majesties the Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, the Emperor of Austria, King of Hungary and Bohemia, the King of Prussia, and the Emperor of the Russias to ask their support and assistance in the difficulties in which she finds himself placed by reason of the hostile proceedings of Muhammad Ali, Pasha of Egypt. So, and then they say, faithful to the engagements which they contracted by the collective note presented to the Porte by the representatives at Constantinople on the 27th of July, 1839. So notice, in the ultimatum that's being delivered to the Pasha of Egypt on August 11th, 1840, that it references this collective note that was signed on July 27th, 1839. And that the four powers here, France is not included in this one. So I'm not sure why Wikipedia had France or the July monarchy included. It's probably just to throw us off, or maybe it's in God's providence to teach us something. Is this becoming clearer for people when we start to look at this prophecy?
There are some clarities that are coming up. One of the points I think you're going to have to take a look at with this is that France, because it had had a lot of dealings with the Ottoman Empire, was probably a group accepted by the Ottomans as one that they would listen to, that they might accept this through.
But they weren't signatories to this collective note, or they were signatories to the collective note, but they weren't signatories to the Treaty of London, even though Wikipedia lists them as one of the signees.
Well, what we may have to do is take a look at the other historical documents from that time.
Yeah, well, I already did. And this is actually the ultimatum itself. And so it doesn't list France as one of the powers. So this is just so France isn't listed in this ultimatum. So this is the one done at London. Okay, so it's signed Palmerston, Newman, Bülow, Brunau, and Chekheb. So this is interesting. And it says, United Kingdom, Emperor of Austria, King of Hungary and Bohemia, the King of Prussia, and the Emperor of the Russias. So that's England, Austria, who's also King of Hungary and Bohemia, King of Prussia, and the Emperor of the Russias. Those are the ones that signed it. Now, we do have 5 names. Lord Palmerston. I don't know who Newman is, which ones are which. There is 5 signatories. So there's some things I guess we have to look into. I do think that Wikipedia must be making a mistake when they say that the July monarchy signed it, because they don't say that in the writing. That's just something in the, that's the Treaty of Dardanelles. This is just here when it says the signatories. So I'm not sure why that's there when it's not listed in the Treaty of London itself.
Well, as I'm looking at this briefly, what you're referring to as far as Lord Palmerston.
Yeah.
Henry John Temple, the 3rd Viscount Palmerston.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a Temple involved.
Yeah.
We'll have to go through and take a look at the different parties that had been involved, why Wikipedia would throw in the July monarchy, and see what else could be addressed. Because the Viscount Palmerston was the British Foreign Secretary for that period.
Yeah, and these people are in Istanbul. right, at the time. So they're representatives of, well, this says it was actually, the Treaty Convention of London was signed in London.
Right.
The collective note was signed by representatives in Istanbul. So I have to remember that. I always get them confused. So, and there's, France is a signatory to the collective note, but it says explicitly that they're not a signatory to the Treaty of London. Yet they're listed here as a signatory by Wikipedia, only in that picture there, not in the text itself. So why they ended up doing that, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm gonna have to look at those 5 names and find out who they are. But as far as what we're learning here, I mean, there's some detail here. But what about the fact that there's 12 days prior to the fulfillment, or the fulfillment of the prophecies, let's say, the notable events that occur either on July 27th, or in this case, they either occur on a Julian or Gregorian date of July 27th. Except the July 15th one, it becomes a symbol as well. Anyway, I know I always get confused with it, but the point is they occur 12 days before the 26th day of the 4th month. So what's the significance of them occurring 12 days before the 26th day of the 4th month? Is there any significance in 12? Stephen, did you say something?
Well, I was just going to say that the calendars, there's God has a hand in these here calendars.
Okay.
The Julian and the Gregorian.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking 12 maybe having the connection with like a covenant.
Right. 12 is a symbol of a covenant. And what's happening here, these are agreements or covenants that are being made, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, God having his hand in these calendars. So we know one's a pagan Roman calendar, the other one's a papal Roman calendar. But there's a number of things. First off, when they made the calendar, the Gregorian calendar, they actually made a mistake because they wanted to line it up with when the calendar was made by Julius Caesar. So they wanted to line the Gregorian calendar up with that calendar, right? So with the Julian, so that the spring equinox would fall at the right time. But they actually made a mistake, because when do the two calendars line up? Do they line up in the 1st century?
I think it's around the 200 AD time period.
The 3rd century. So they got it off by 2 days. Right? So I'm not sure how they did that, but if they had got it right, we couldn't have been using all of these calendars in the way that we're using them, right? So God had his hand in it, in his providence. So when they made the Gregorian calendar, they were trying to line it up properly, but they made a mistake. And that mistake was fortuitous from a point of, or providential, I guess I should say, from the point of prophecy. In the Millerite period, there's 12 days difference. In our time, there's 13 days difference between the two calendars. 12 being the symbol of a covenant, 13 the symbol of rebellion. So there's a lot of detail in here. And I know we're going to go over this stuff again next week. We're going to I am going to put some stuff together for people. I'm still trying to put some of these notes together so I can send them to everyone. But to me, it is pretty difficult to look at this whole line of these prophecies and say this isn't in God's providence, that this is not a fulfillment of prophecy, that somehow this is just Satan's counterfeit prophecy, the satanic prophecy, as Heidi Hikes tries to make out. Okay, so when we look at this, we can see the 26th day of the fourth month is going to show up as each of these days as either being July 27th, Julian or Gregorian. In this case, in 1809, we have to use the Millerite understanding of counting the start of the year with Boston instead of Jerusalem, but that gives us some information as well. But the dates themselves, July 27th and this July 15th, which lines up with this, which is the 26th day of the fourth month, shows that the events that fulfill prophecy occur 12 days previous to the 26th day of the fourth month, which that they occur each time, 3 times in a row with these 12 days, is pretty remarkable. And these are the events that they would mark. And especially the collective note in the Treaty of London, as we know that these ones, the Treaty of London mentions the collective note. But this Treaty of Dardanelles here on July 27th is also setting up this situation, because this is dealing with this treaty between the Ottomans and England. So there's a lot going on here prophetically. It's very dense, very complex, very involved. I mean, it's not hard to understand. It's not, nuclear science or anything. But it does take time to absorb the information, to put it all together. And the chances that this could just be accident are extremely unlikely. We also have this chiastic way of applying the hour, day, and a month and a year. So we're going to go year, month, hour, day, or year, month, day, hour. So very, very interesting, this whole prophecy. Now remember, in 2015, I hadn't figured all of this out. So it wasn't until later when I noticed the 26th day of the fourth month that then I noticed these, the collective note, the Treaty of London, all these different things. So that's going to be in 2018. So 2015, I have the symbol of the 26th day of the fourth month here and here, but not these 3. Any final questions before we close with prayer?
You might take a look at the chat real quick.
Okay. 12 days equals 17280, which is
12 times 24 times 60.
Yeah, and it's also all the numbers of July 18, 2020. And that's simply why is that? Why does it create this number? Because remember, 13 days is 18720, right? Iran, can you explain what you're doing here just so people can understand it?
Yeah, that's just the minutes. So I just multiplied 12 by 1440.
Right. So if you just multiply the minutes here, I'll just share the screen so people can see this here. So all I did is I multiply 144 or 1,440, which is the number of minutes in a day times 12. And I get that. Now, we already knew that if I multiply 13 by 1440, I get 18720. So it's interesting that both the number 12 and the number 13, when multiplied by 1/100th of 144,000, produce the exact same 5 digits, just in a different order. So this again is Palmoni, the wonderful number, that we have this coincidence of numbers that occur between 12 and 13. Okay. So there's all these types of things that we're learning that are definitely that show that this prophecy of Josiah Litch's prophecy is connected to the July 18, 2020 prediction, which we're going to get into. So what we're going to do next week is we're going to go back to Jeff's notes, but we might do sort of some reviews of these things as we go through that. And then we will finally go back to our history and see how these things are connected. So it's going to take a couple of weeks to get through Josiah Litch's prophecy. So thanks for that. Let's close with prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we are thankful once again for the things that you show us and teach us as we study together. We know, Lord, there's still a bunch of loose ends, things that aren't clear, that we need to bring together. We ask that you can help us do that as we study individually in the next few days and come together again Sunday morning. Help us to have a clear understanding of your word. May your Holy Spirit work upon our hearts in convicting us and giving us power to overcome sin. Be with each person. May your angels watch over them. And we ask this and pray in Jesus' name. Amen.